Hey everybody, it's Shu. Now, I know I said I was done making videos for Magic Duels, but it turns out, well, I have another deck that I've had a lot of fun with and I wanted to share with you guys. I'm no longer going to say that I'm done making videos for Magic Duels. I'm probably done, but I'm not going to declare it outright anymore because I have burned myself enough times now declaring that. So anyway, I wanted to talk about a deck that I built that I've been having fun with that's centered around this card that you see on the screen right now, Mechanized Production. It's a blue enchant. You place it on an artifact, and at your start of your upkeep, create a copy of that artifact, and if you have 8 or more of that same thing, you just win the game outright. Now, it's a little tricky because you have to have 8, which means that this thing has to last a while, or you have to make a lot of copies in another way. It's vulnerable to removal of enchants or artifacts because they can either blow up the enchantment or blow up the artifact that it's attached to. So it's a little tricky, and also it's a mythic rare, and in Duels, the rarity restriction is that you can only have 1 copy of any given mythic rare in your deck. We have ways around it, but it makes it a little trickier. Now, the first version of the deck that I tried to make with this, I tried to make it more of like an all-in combo deck. I used things like Expose Evil to generate clues, Erdwall Illuminator to make more clues, Ulvenwald Mysteries to make even more clues and sometimes trade those in for soldier tokens. If you haven't figured it out yet, the plan was to use Mechanized Production and rapidly generate clues with other cards so that I don't have to wait the 7 extra turns on top of, the time it took to get out a first clue and then cast a 4-mana enchant. So the idea was rapidly flood the board with clues, put out Mechanized Production, and win as quickly as possible. And sometimes it worked. It could win fairly fast if you had the right hand, but you had to play a lot of cards that weren't very good. You had to play cards like Erdwall Illuminator, which, it's a fine draft card, but I wouldn't use it if I have better things available. You had to play cards like Expose Evil, which is a fine tempo card if you have a lot of, if you've set a really healthy clock and you're beating down your opponent. But if you're trying to stall to get to a combo win, it's pretty underwhelming. So that deck, it could still beat the AI. It was a fun thing to mess around with, but it was absolutely terrible against human players, and I've fallen from rank 40 testing it and, improving it. It was a fun deck, but it didn't really do what it needed to do. So I went and started from square one, said, how do we get a Mechanized Production deck to work? And I'm still working within the Bant colors, white, blue, green, but instead of playing sort of the all-in combo deck that I had originally built, I'm now using a sort of Bant control deck that uses lots of enchantments to build up advantage, to protect us from threats, and over time, Mechanized Production will, again, either get us there via clues, or it can get us there by duplicating Alchemist's aura. Or, not Alchemist, I have auras on the brain. Alchemist's vial. So I wanted to show you the deck. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so we're going to go through it step by step. We're going to start with Herald of the Pantheon. We're running both copies that were allowed. It's a rare, so we can't run more than that. 2/2 for 2, fine body. We're not really in it for the bodies on the creatures here, but it's, that's a good value. What we're here for is the fact that enchants cost 1 less to cast. And this is a very enchantment-heavy deck, so that increase in tempo matters a great deal. And anytime you cast an enchantment spell, you gain a life. That helps against the more aggressive decks, which are definitely the bane of what we do. We can beat aggressive decks, but if we stumble on draws, it can be really difficult. And the extra life that's gained from casting enchantment spells really helps. Alchemist Vial. We're running all 4 of these. Alchemist Vial does a lot of things in this deck. It draws a card when it comes in, which helps smooth out our draws, helps make sure we hit our land drops, things like that. We can sacrifice it to make sure that things can't attack us, and that's handy for the early game when we are developing a board. And it's also an artifact, which means if we put Mechanized Production on it, we can win by making 8 Alchemist Vials. Handy when there's already 4 in the deck, and especially handy when each new copy draws us a card already. I think that having the Alchemist Vial option instead of just clues really improves the deck, and I often find that I'm winning by putting Mechanized Production on Alchemist Vial instead of clues. We keep clues because it's a good game plan, but Alchemist Vial is pretty sweet here. Ether Meltdown costs 2, has Flash, which means you can play it at instant speed, and enchants a creature or a vehicle and gives it -4/-0, which against most things in Duels is going to make it unable to harm you. Anything that can still harm you is going to harm you much less. So we like that. It gives us time to reach our win condition. Being able to be put on a creature or a vehicle is really nice because vehicles are difficult to interact with in ways that creatures are often not. The fact that it has Flash, so we can play it on their turn, makes it very nice. And it's an enchantment, which means that our friend here, Herald of the Pantheon, is going to make it cheaper if he's out, which means instead of costing 2, which is already very fair, it can only cost 1 and still gain us a life too. So that's pretty sweet. We would run 4 of it if we were allowed to, but since it's an uncommon, we're only allowed to run 3, and we are running all 3 of them. It's pretty sweet. It also gives us 2 energy counters, which we don't use to really great effect here, although it does improve our mana with Ether Hub, which we run, and I'll show you that later in the deck. Heliod's Pilgrim. We're running 4 of these, and it's a very unimpressive creature. 1/2 for 3 mana is a really poor deal, but being able to dig up an aura from the deck and put it in our hand is pretty awesome, because we have several control pieces that are auras, and we also have Mechanized Production, which is our game-winning combo piece that is also an aura. So we use this to dig up control options or to dig up the win for the game, and it comes with a body that we can just throw in front of something and feel no guilt about if it dies. So we're running all 4. Tireless Tracker is one of the main reasons that we run green. The other is Herald of the Pantheon, of course. Tireless Tracker is pretty great. Tireless Tracker creates clues, which give us a way to win with Mechanized Production on a clue. By creating clues with land drops, he helps us smooth out our draws, and by getting bigger and bigger every time we sacrifice a clue, he makes a threatening body that makes people not want to attack us, and sometimes he becomes a win condition on his own just by being huge. Tireless Tracker is pretty sweet, and we are running the maximum allowed 2. Thopter Arrest. It's an enchantment. It's not an aura, sadly, so we can't dig it up with Heliod's Pilgrim, but it's we can run 3 of it, and it exiles an artifact or a creature until it leaves the battlefield for a very nice cost of 3 mana. I think it's a great card. It'll cost 2 with our friend and gain us a life, which is so much the better. Great card. Imprisoned in the Moon is similar. This one is an aura, though, so we can dig it up with Heliod's Pilgrim. It has a similar effect in that it's there to exile something that is giving us a problem. But instead of actually exiling, what Imprisoned in the Moon does is change it into a colorless land. Effectively, you are locking somebody in the moon, and all the player gets in return is access to that part of the moon to draw colorless mana. It's in some ways better. It's nice that it's an aura, which means we can dig it up. It's nice that it works on creatures, lands, or planeswalkers. We need planeswalker removal, and this is a pretty good use of it. In some ways it's worse. The fact that it turns a target into land is dangerous against certain opponents because you are ramping up their mana production. The more aggressive someone is, the better Imprisoned in the Moon is, because the lower their mana curve is, the less that extra land really matters. But having something that takes out creatures, lands, or planeswalkers is too valuable not to run. We run the maximum 2. Scatter to the Wind, we're running maximum 2 again. Mostly just a counterspell. There's not a lot of good counter spells in Magic Duels, so we are running this because it's the best one. And having Awaken is nice. There are some other Awaken options in the deck that this can synergize with. And normally we're just going to run it out as a cancel, just a vanilla counterspell. But the Awaken option is a nice little extra piece. So we're running the maximum 2. Cast Out. Cast Out is awesome. Cast Out's another enchantment, so again, it can cost cheaper and gain us life. It has Flash, so we can cast it on the opponent's turn, and exiles any non-land permanent that an opponent has until it's gone. You need to answer a creature, you need to answer a planeswalker, just any permanent that isn't a land, Cast Out will answer it at instant speed. And if, in the terrible, unlikely situation where you need to just keep drawing cards more than you need Cast Out, it has cycling, so Cast Out is pretty fantastic. We are running the maximum allowed 3. Mechanized Production, the reason we're here. I talked at length about this card at the start. We're running the maximum allowed 1. Bounty of the Luxa is a really fun card. We're running the maximum allowed 2. It's an enchantment. Again, with our friend at the start, Harold, this can cost 3, which can be really powerful. If you get out turn 3, you get a lot more advantage than if you got it out turn 4. But it sort of has a toggle effect. One turn, it will draw you an extra card. The next turn, it will give you extra mana for your first main phase. We are running the maximum 2. If you have both out, you can have them either... Depending on when you play it, you can either have the effects double up, so you draw 2 cards one turn, and then the next turn you get lots of mana, or you can stagger them, so each turn you're getting both effects. You draw 1 card and you get the extra mana. I prefer that because that tends to give you more things you can do, rather than drawing lots of cards and not having the mana to play it all. But yeah, Bounty of the Luxa is really nice. We are reasonably mana hungry, and we want to draw a lot of cards to get to our pieces to protect ourselves and to create and finish the combo. So I really like running both of these. Tamiyo's Journal, again, running the maximum of 2. Costs 5, which is really steep. But at the beginning of our upkeep, we investigate, which means create a clue token. And that gives us our engine to create clues for Mechanized Production if we want to use it on clues. And since it creates them on its own, it means that with Mechanized Production, we will get there in half the time, which is pretty great. What I really like is that you can sacrifice 3 clues to dig up any card from the deck and put it in your hand. So if something bad is about to happen and we have enough clues, we can use Tamiyo's Journal to crack 3 clues and go dig up a counterspell, dig up a board wipe, cast out, just anything that we need to answer a situation. Tamiyo's Journal is pretty good for that. You're going to be fairly vulnerable the turn you play it, but I think it really pays for itself, and we run both. There is one problem, which is that it's a legendary artifact, which means you can't have 2 out at once. If you do, you'll be forced to sacrifice 1. I've made that mistake before. Not the end of the world, but yeah, be cognizant of it. You don't want to waste 5 mana. And be stuck with 1 journal as before. Confirm Suspicion, it's another counterspell. It costs entirely too much for a counterspell, but it investigates 3 times, which means creates 3 clue tokens. So it's another route to get to a Mechanized Production win and sometimes catch people by surprise. I feel like this is maybe the most underwhelming card in the deck and the one that I'd be most interested in replacing. But at the moment, I haven't found anything that really stands out that I would want to put in its place. Maybe a copy of Tamiyo and 1 other card, maybe just another Planeswalker, might be better. I guess, the Shadows over Innistrad Jace plus Tamiyo would be a good option. But right now, we're running the Confirmed Suspicions. It's partly a concession to playing against people where we want extra counterspells to protect our win condition. If you're looking to play it just against bots, I would definitely replace this with Planeswalkers. These bots aren't really smart enough to go after your win condition. So do as you see fit. And then we run the maximum allowed 2 planar outburst. Board wipes are good. We would like more, but there aren't really other good board wipes we'd like to use. This one blows up all non-land creatures, which effectively becomes all creatures. Unless you have a land creature to benefit from it, your opponent probably won't. But if, for example, you use the Awaken option on our counterspell earlier, whose name I always forget, Scatter to the Winds, so then you have a land creature left over, not only will Planar Outburst protect that creature and blow up everything else, but if you cast it for its Awaken option, which gets easier when you have lots of mana, especially through Bounty of the Luxa, then you could either have 2 land creatures or one really big one. So it's sort of an alternate win condition. Most of the time you're just going to cast it for its normal cost and blow up dudes, but it's nice to have the option to win by smashing someone with a huge land. After that, we are running 26 lands. 26 is a whole hell of a lot, but this deck cannot afford to stumble. It's not a deck that intends to win by fighting with superior creatures, so we can't just say, oh, well, we got stuck on 3, but we'll just fight it out with our guys. That's a really bad situation to be in. So we run 26 land. Let's start with the non-basics. We are running the maximum allowed 3 Ether Hub. Mostly this is just for mana fixing. Creates an energy, and then you can spend that to add 1 mana of any color to your pool. So on its own, it's a one-shot color fixer, but we can make more mana through our, what was that card called? Ether Meltdown, which adds 2 energy to our pool that we're otherwise not using. So on its own, one-shot fixing. With Ether Meltdown, it can fix our mana a little longer. Pretty good. We're going to run the maximum 3. Then we run the tap lands, Sunpetal Grove, Glacial Fortress, Hinterland Harbor. These all come in tapped unless you control a land that has the type that the colors produce here. So like this makes white or green, so it comes in tapped unless you have a forest or plains. Similar for the other 2 lands. We make it a little easier for those to come in untapped by having Prairie Stream and Canopy Vista, which are a little tricky because they come in tapped unless you control 2 basics, and we don't run a lot of them. But the important thing is they have the land types here. Like Canopy Vista is a forest plains, and Prairie Stream is a plains island. That means if you have one of these out already, then any of the tap lands will come in untapped. So it helps our mana fixing a good bit, keeps our tempo going. And then we are running 5 forests, 5 island, and 3 plains. We're running fewer plains because white is not really... White is more of a late game option for us. White gets our Pilgrim of Heliod, which costs 3. It gets our board wipes, but those are things that don't matter in the super early immediate game. Blue and green matter a little more. We want to get Herald out. We want to be able to cast either Meltdown, so having green and blue available is nice. We also just have more white available through our multi-lands than we do the other colors, so we don't need as many plains. So yeah, 26 lands and 34 cards. It's a pretty fun deck. So let's see it in action. So I want to make abundantly clear going into this, this is probably not your best bet for a deck for playing against people. It can win and it can climb ranks, and we're going to show you evidence of that, but it does struggle against some of the more aggressive decks, and anyone that has things that can remove artifacts or enchantments can blow up your win condition if you're not holding counters. It's a tricky thing to beat people with. I'm not saying it can't be done. For me, it has a win rate of roughly 2 out of 3 games, but there are better decks to beat people with. This is just something that I put together for fun. It's certainly better than the previous Mechanized Production deck that I was trying to run. So we're going to put out our basic lands here so that if we get other lands like the first one, we can put them in untapped. Put in the vial to draw and set ourselves up for the win condition here. Not sure what this guy's playing, but seeing the abundance of green, we might be walking into enchantment and artifact destruction, which would suck. Alright, this is tricky. Normally you just pitch a land and be done with it, but we really need our lands. I think it's Cast Out. Cast Out is a great card. But we need our lands, we need Mechanized Production, and Tamio's Journal and Planar Outburst are both extremely helpful. If he's playing like a 2-2, we probably expect him to flood the board, which makes our board wipe more useful than our cast out. Now, we could play Imprisoned in the Moon here, but I don't think that's a good idea because it will give him another land, which will speed up his threat production. So we're just going to pass the turn here. Next turn, we can set up the combo and get working toward drawing more cards and ending this game. We'll take a little bit of punishment. The fact that he stumbled on his land seems like it'll help us. Okay, so he's going to be like a Delirium kind of deck. Alright, yeah. So he's going to keep digging and doing some nasty things. But I think Delirium, a lot of what it does is about beating up creatures, and that's not super relevant against us. As long as he doesn't blow up our win conditions, I think we're fine. We're going to put out Bounty of the Luxa to get to that 5th land so that we can have a board wipe ready if the next turn is bad for us. And it's just going to do more for us in general than Mechanized Production will. Production can win us the game, but not for a good while. Luxa will help us develop our situation and get the game to a winnable state. We could board wipe here, but I think he's going to play at least one more creature the next turn, and I'd really like to get like at least a 3-for-1 here. So we're going to put out Mechanized Production and get that rolling. Next turn, we will draw an extra card off of that, plus get our mana from Bounty of the Luxa, so we can hopefully have a pretty productive turn. And yeah, a lot of the stuff he's putting out here is for interacting with creatures, and I mean, while we run some, we're not super worried about that because our plan does not win by hitting him in the face usually. It can. We could get there. But probably going to win through Mechanized Production. Okay, Blister Pod's a little annoying because it's going to leave something behind, but I'm not going to let him keep attacking me like this, even if the creature he adds to the board is a Pissant who's going to come back with a token. I think this is the time we board wipe, when we have all this mana. So yeah, we draw that extra card there. We get a ton of extra mana. We're going to put down the plains because we want triple white. We could get it from Ether Hub, but rather not spend the energy, obviously. We'll make Ether Hub our land that we awaken with the board wipe here. And now we can put some pressure on him or waste some of his time and resources. Like if he wants to spend a turn hucking a kill spell at us, we're happy because our progress toward the win condition continues to move forward. So next turn we're going to draw 3 cards. Our normal draw, Bounty of the Luxa, and another Vial. He's just digging for more stuff. I like these green-black Delirium decks, but he's playing a game that doesn't really do anything with us, and that's good for us. One of the nice things about playing a deck that works really heavily with artifacts and enchantments is that people who play a game built to destroy creatures end up with a lot of dead or underperforming cards. Okay, so we got a guy with Death Touch, but we can resolve that with Ether Meltdown. If he plays the Witch, if we can transform it with the Moon before he gets a chance to flip it over, that would be nice. We'll see what happens. We're going to attack and offer him the opportunity to block so that we can respond with Ether Meltdown. Huh. Okay. We're going to keep the board wipe here, but it's a nice option if things start getting out of hand. We're going to attack, and let's see if he wants to make the trade. Often he might, to kill a creature and a land, but he might also know something's up if I'm attacking in. Yeah, he knows. That's fine. When he attacks next turn, we can either melt down. Well, we can do it now when he's tapped out. We don't know if he has things to discourage interaction. Yeah, let's just pass the turn. We could Thop to arrest him, but I really want that for his Witch, which we saw him draw. Okay. By all means. Yeah, see, his deck is actually built around getting in and fighting, and we are keeping up in life just by being able to beat down with a land and draw a lot of cards. Not that I anticipate a race here, but yeah. Okay, so it's a little awkward because he has another guy with Death Touch out here, so we may not be attacking next turn. Let's see, you can get your 1 damage. I'll take my energy. Okay, sacrifice the token to get another mana to play the Witch. Well, shit, we can just drop another Planar Outburst and make our land bigger and beat in to end the game, I think. Since we have the bonus, the Bounty of the Luxa, we can spend a bunch of mana, kill everything, have a huge 8/8 land to go in there and beat him up. And he knows it's done. He's quit. Let's finish off the AI, just for the hell of it. And next turn, if we want, we can just fight through the blockers using these Alchemist Vials so that he can't block. It's a pretty cool deck. But you know, now let's since we basically have the game in control and we have ways to end this and get through blockers if it gets that bad, let's wait it out. Let's especially with the counter protection we just drew. Let's wait this out and let's go for the actual Mechanized Production win condition. That'll be fun. We've got 6 right now. We only need to make 2 more now. Automatic mana tapping was slightly awkward in not leaving up the counter spells, so hopefully nothing bad happens. Again, if it does, we just beat in and end the game with creatures, but yeah. Okay. That's fine. Creatures are not going to kill us. Here we go to our 7th. So next turn we win. Nice to see you, Iliad's Pilgrims. We are running you as a 4 of, and you decide to show up after your purpose has already been served. But shoot, let's go dig up some Ether Meltdowns here. Since we have Herald out, it only costs 1 mana, and we gain a life. That's pretty sweet. One thing I did in the previous all-in version of the deck was run Anointed Procession, which doubles the tokens you produce. And some of you might not know this, some of you might, but that counts tokens that are not creatures, such as these token copies of the artifacts. Okay, so here's something, Reclamation Sage is the sort of card where it could interact and blow up our win condition. You know what, I was going to do the Awaken, but let's leave up that other counter spell, because if he has another, I don't want to just lose the game to that. Okay, Yeah, you can resolve that. You don't have any mana. And let's just block. Now this should do it. Going to make another copy. Mechanized Production will trigger, and that's the game. So yeah, not bad. We are on to another game. There was one in the middle where we lost, which I would have included, but Duels crashed. It's against an aggressive mono red deck. Yeah. Okay, opponent disconnected at the very start. You run into a lot of people that do this. They do it so that they can play against an AI opponent and try to protect their rank. It still hasn't got this guy to rank 40, so who really cares? We're playing out that land first because it has the land types, so our tap lands after this will come in untapped, which will allow us to play things on turn 2. Looks like we're going to play Herald and then a turn 3 Luxa, which is pretty sweet. Let's play the basic here, and oh, I clicked the wrong card. Okay, I think we're still gonna be fine. But yeah, Herald into Luxa would have been a really good start. This is fine. We'll be fine. We're just playing a little slower and less efficiently than we could be. Huh. Well, he's got 4 colors represented here. When I see that, usually I expect 4 or 5 color Super Friends, Planeswalker control. That can be really obnoxious, because there's not a whole lot to interact with Planeswalkers in Duels. We have more than most people, but right now we have nothing in hand. Okay, so that guy's in for land fixing, and yeah, he's playing 5 color. This has got to be Super Friends. He's running every Planeswalker he has, I bet. Oh, well, we have double Luxa. That's cool. We could have got it out turns 3 and 4 if we had started with Luxa, but or rather, if we had started with Herald and then Luxa. But we've got a decent start, and it looks like he is a little slow to get going. Hopefully we don't get blown away by Planeswalkers until we get some answers. Luxa will help us draw them, as will Mechanized Production. Okay, Tamiyo, that's a problem. Especially seeing as we don't have a lot to beat past an 0-3 right now. We could sacrifice the Vial, but well, I guess we don't need to. I guess we're just going to exile Tamiyo. We could play Luxa right now to get the 1-2 punch going, but I really want to stop Tamiyo before she builds up advantage. We could play a cheaper Thopter Arrest on this 0-3, but I don't think that that's a good use of our cards. That is something we are happy to Thopter Arrest, though. I don't want to play Luxa this turn, because if I do, it'll double up the effects. And we'll draw 2, and then the next turn we'll have 6 extra mana. It's a little awkward. So we're going to use this turn to play Mechanized Production and Tireless Tracker. Yeah. So the combo's in place. We've got 1 Luxa going. Next turn we'll get another. Okay, what's he exiling? Okay, the cast out. A human might have gone after our win condition there if he knows it's our win condition. Getting Tamiyo back is a little bit of a pain, but AI doesn't know how to use it and has tapped down our Vial because it thinks it's going to beat in with the 0-3. Okay, that guy's a little bit of a problem. We're going to want to get rid of him. Not so much for the damage, as we're making a fairly large amount of life with all the enchantments we're casting, but I don't want him to start getting extra clues. If he starts getting extra clues, then he can, draw his way out of this. But first things first, we're going to stop Tamiyo. That is a more reliable source of card advantage. We'll take the 2 damage in the sky this turn because we are at 26 life. We don't care about that. And hopefully we will draw a better answer to the 2-3 than another Imprisoned in the Moon. Which, speaking of, Imprisoned in the Moon and Tamiyo, it's the Rabbit in the Moon, folks. How cool is that? Next turn, we're going to draw a whole hell of a lot of cards, and that'll be cool. First, we get one off Mechanized Production, making a vial. And then we're going to get off of Draw Step and Luxa. And we'll just cast out that bishop. We'll do it main phase. Normally it's better to play something at the last possible moment, but in this case I would rather get it done than allow him to draw one or more cards that might allow him to give his creature hexproof or counter our spell or do something like that. And we're well on our way to winning this. This guy is almost out of gas here. He's, not making very serious threats, and we are drawing lots of cards every turn. Tamiyo's Journal can start digging up counterspells for us when we get another clue going. See, check out this ridiculous bounty. How cool is that? I'm going to put in Heliod's Pilgrim to use some of our spare colorless mana, or our spare temporary mana. I wish that the auto tapper was more intelligent and spent that temporary green there, but it won't. We're going to spend it here just to crack a clue. Okay, nothing fancy. And if he wants to attack with that zombie token, we'll happily take it, or maybe we'll just spend Ether Meltdown, honestly. We're so close to the end. Let's just be extravagant. Gain the life. Gain the energy. Kill the zombie. Draw a bunch more cards. Another clue. There's our draw step. Draw a card off bounty. There's another vial. Look at this embarrassment of riches. This is awesome. Dig up some more auras here. What do we even have left? Okay, one more Ether Meltdown. Well, it's better to have it in our hand. We've already drawn through half our deck. This is a lot of fun. If you're like me, even if you lose a game, if you drew most of your deck, it was a good game of Magic. But I think here we're going to draw most of our deck and win the game. We have 6 vials, and this guy is not getting what he needs to beat us up. Okay, here's the next Planeswalker, Arlen Cord. Yeah, we'll imprison her in the moon too. I assume she's probably going to use the flip ability here. No sense in buffing the other guy to attack. Yeah. That's fine. It's another wolf token. Whatever. We'll imprison Arlen in the moon and keep ourselves alive for the following turn to reach our win condition. 0-3, don't need to block. If you did anything scary with it, we would just throw out Ether Meltdown to make it weak again. Another card. Another clue. Go to our draw step. Another thing off of Luxa. And we have more cards than we can hold. That's awesome. Let's imprison Arlen Cord. Gain some more life. I love that Herald makes all these enchantments cheaper. And now if he does something scary, we can use Tamio's Journal will crack 3 clues and dig up a counterspell and stop it. So that's pretty cool. Doesn't seem to have much of anything. Yeah, sure, we'll chuck an Ether Meltdown here. It's honestly a little wasteful. We really don't need this for 2/2 tokens, but the win is in hand. It doesn't look like he has any more threats, so let's be extravagant. And he hasn't played anything. We're going to go dig up that counterspell anyway. If he's really smart, he could use this moment where we're searching to chuck something before we have a counterspell, but it's the AI. The AI is rarely that smart. And here comes the win. So yeah, that's the deck. I think it's pretty fun. Give it a shot. Let me know how it works for you.